Well, there has been a ton of news since the coronavirus outbreak really started impacting our lives in the last few weeks, and it can, of course, be very hard to keep up. Well, joining us this morning, Wisconsin Congressman Bryan Steil. Good morning, Bryan. He is the co-chair of the Middle Class Jobs Caucus, something a lot of people are worried about right now. And, of course, a lot of people, Congressman, worried about what's happening here with the coronavirus. Well, good morning again. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
So we also have people right here on our Facebook live stream, and this morning we are taking questions for Congressman Steil, and we will relay those questions to the Congressman. But first of all, I want to get your opinion on what happened here in Wisconsin yesterday. The elections, which made national news, international news. What was your take on everything that happened?
From the federal perspective, we want to make sure that the states have the ability to ultimately do what's right for the citizens of each individual state. The governor and the legislature ultimately came out with a decision where the election was going to be held yesterday. I voted absentee in person on Monday. And so what we're going to be working on in Washington is to make sure that we're prepared come November, that we're able to completely carry out the federal election at a national level.
We saw places like Burlington, which had drive-through voting. Where I live, Grafton, it was pretty light. But what happened in Milwaukee, would you agree that just can't happen again? Not during this pandemic?
Yeah, we definitely saw some municipalities step up to the plate and be able to execute the election thoughtfully. We also, some municipalities have some real problems. And I think there's going to be a lot of look back and lessons learned to see exactly what happened in cities like Milwaukee, where they reduced the total number of polling places from well over 100 to down to 5.
180 down to 5, which is what I saw, 2.5-hour lines in some places in the hail, and just wasn't a good look for Wisconsin. So glad to hear that things are going to be progressing, at least hopefully, toward the November general election. Well, you and all politicians, no matter what we think, no matter which side you're on, you're a person, you have family, How has this coronavirus been affecting you? Do you know anyone that's been sick?
I do know people that have been sick. I can say, thankfully, in my personal family, nobody has been sick. I've been spending a lot of time running to the grocery store and delivering those groceries to more vulnerable populations. I got my mom and dad in Janesville, and I got a 95-year-old grandma. And so we're making sure that those groups are protected. And then spending a lot of time on the phone, working as a general policy perspective. How do we make sure everyone in our community is safe?
You mentioned some of your older relatives, and I know mine, a lot of people. There's been a lot of people didn't know, is this real, is this not? And now they didn't listen at first. How are you able to convince your relatives to stay home, that this is real?
I talk to everybody the same way. This is a time where listening to our healthcare executives or our healthcare experts is absolutely critical. This is not a time you want to go on your Facebook feed and try to make a determination what to do. You want to go and find official resources. On my website, steil.house.gov, we have put up links to local, state, and federal agencies so people have a one-stop shop to get official resources. I think that's what's so critical right now, is to listen to our health experts, not to one-off things that you're finding on social media.
We are on social media, though, broadcasting live on Facebook. You can hear the Congressman right now. If you go, we're having some issues with the audio on the Facebook live stream. If you go on air to WMLW, which is channel 49 over the air here, or 7 or 1007 on Spectrum, you'd be able to hear Congressman Steil easier, and of course ask your questions right there on the Facebook page. So you had a town hall with the Wisconsin Health Department about 2 weeks ago. At that time, you said none of us are satisfied with testing right now. It's been 2 weeks since then. Are you more satisfied? Are things getting better?
We continue to make progress on our testing, but there is a long ways to go. And what I mean by that is we need to make sure that everybody who wants a test can get one, that we're not going to be there at the beginning of a pandemic of this nature. But that doesn't mean we don't need to strive to get there. If you look at the CARES Act that passed now about a week and a half ago, I drove from Janesville to Washington, D.C. to get it across the line. There's additional funding to make sure that we're getting testing and research in place. And ultimately, we need to get to a spot where huge quantities of people can be tested across our state. Then we can start to understand what the numerator and the denominator of this problem are. And then we can begin to even more have a more focused attack on this invisible virus.
So you just mentioned you drove to D.C. Congress, of course, passed the CARES Act, a couple of versions of it. My question for you is, what can an individual congressman like yourself, the freshman congressman like yourself, you're not really on any related committees, are you? So what can you do in D.C. or here to help?
So I'm on the phone almost constantly with my colleagues across the United States. I sit on the House Financial Services Committee. So actually we are quite busy on conference calls and in speaking with each other about how are we going to address public housing, as well as running and making sure that our financial institutions are able to provide loans that are critical to small businesses. The reason for that is we want to make sure that those individuals who've lost their jobs through no faults of their own are able to go back to a job when we get back on our feet on the other side of this. And so I've been spending a lot of time with my colleagues, taking ideas, things that I'm learning from boots on the ground here in Wisconsin, where I'm having conversations with people on a daily basis and making sure that we're improving this legislation so it's narrowly tailored and focused into addressing both the coronavirus from a health standpoint and making sure that workers who've fallen on hard times have the resources so that they can pay their rent, their mortgage, and their grocery bill.
Of course, the financial aspect of this is hugely important. And one of the things that you did do, you had a big role in what Jockey in Kenosha is doing to help address the pandemic.
Yeah, so at the very beginning of this, I reached out to companies and manufacturing companies in particular across southeast Wisconsin. Wisconsin has a great history of strong manufacturing and stepping up to the plate. The Jockey was one of the first companies to reach back out to me. They have a history. They actually helped build parachutes in World War II. And so they reached out and we helped them get connected with FEMA, get expedited review. And then after they had gotten approved to make gowns, protective medical equipment for our nurses and doctors, they determined that the gating item in the production of these gowns was a company in Milton, Wisconsin, Charter NEX. And they asked if I might know anybody there. It's a small world. That's actually where I worked at before I ran for Congress. And so I called Charter NEX and identified for them the importance of this order. They actually worked overnight, the third shift, and they produced a product that should have taken 4 weeks. They did it overnight. They air freighted this. And companies like Charter NEX, like Jockey, numerous companies across southeast Wisconsin are stepping up to the plate to make sure that our medical providers, nurses, and doctors have the protective equipment that they need so that they can take care of us. It's a great statement about the entrepreneurial spirit of those of us in Wisconsin, about the workers willing to work late nights. It's a statement of how we're ultimately going to be able to defeat the virus.
Those are the kind of things that your representative can do for you, something very exact like that locally. Also, you can help individual constituents, like you helped a family that was stuck in Peru. We will continue to ask your questions and talk about what happened in Peru with Congressman Bryan Steil. Join us, stay with us here on the Facebook live stream feed. Continue to ask your questions. We will ask those questions to Congressman Steil coming up after the break.